Back with part 2 of the Melbourne Punters show. Boys, we're going to take a leaf out.
Jumping. It's about now I normally get sacked from whatever movie I'm well into part 2.
It's hard to sack you if you're not getting paid.
That's
it. We're going to take a leaf out of Glenn's book and look at some of the highs and lows of the year that's about to conclude. Ralphie, do you want to kick us off?
Can I just say that my high of the year, without a doubt, was watching Glenn do the highs and lows. That was my highlight of the year. But it's a hard act to follow, but Ralphie, you can try.
All right, I'll go 5. This is nice and quick. The way Caulfield raced 6 times in 5 weeks through the Spring Carnival. That's a high. Yeah. Absolutely. It was, and more importantly, it wasn't fenced on every meeting, but it was as you expected. So when the rail was out, the slingshot runners were advantaged.
It wasn't how I expected on Caulfield Guineas Day.
Caulfield Guineas Day was the one that...
It was an anomaly for me, which I still don't understand, but it just shows you how subtle these things are.
Yep. 2, Darren Weir, it's fantastic Prince of Penzance, Melbourne Cup and all that, but to me, his ability to keep horses racing so consistently deep in a prep, the likes of Teu, Refulgent, Mahuda, Falago, La Passe, etc. Burning front. Just amazing. The great Damien Oliver, still at the peak of his powers, 20 years after he was at the peak of his powers. And yes, he fucked up and he got a decent old suspension for it and he nearly broke himself in 2. So that I thought his Spring Carnival riding was as good as ever. The industry rallying for age journo Michael Lynch's son, and Joey Lynch, Manny Galagotis, your mate, the boys. But amongst everyone, and that's one of many examples in the industry. We all can say goods and bad things, but that was a good example of the greatness of the industry.
What's the website there, Ralph?
Everyday Hero, just go Joey Lynch, Everyday Hero, and you can't miss it. And to me, schoolies, what is it? Schoolies for blokes in their 40s.
Yeah.
To me, the bull is back. And I know some people, when the boys touched on in Sydney, to me, I'm a massive Rick McIntosh fan because he bleeds from his heart and he loves the jumps and gives it that colour. And I think the bull is back. And to me, that's my fight at 5th.
Highs?
My high clearly of the year was American Pharaoh. I think it's nearly the best horse I've ever seen. So he was clearly he was my highlight of the year. That and the 2 performances of Winks.
Did he win a race, American Pharaoh or something? What did he do?
The Triple Crown and one on Breeders' Cup Day. Some of us got up really early in the morning.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about
it. It was just freakish, and I think I'd be very surprised if he doesn't come out when they do the announcement in January as the highest rating horse for the year. But some of the stuff that he was doing, if we think we're going bad here in Victoria, racing industry-wise, well, America's about 30 years in front of where we are now, and they desperately needed it.
And even though there's a better chance of one of the 4 of us to end up with Taylor Swift, what's the chances he still gets nominated for the Cox Plate in the Melbourne Cup next year? They talk about it, and he'll be coming out.
But the other 2 performances I'm like most of you, I watch racing and sport every single day, but there were 2 real performances that stuck out, and they were both Winks. Winks in the Cox Plate and that Sunshine Coast Guineas Day.
Yeah.
Johnny McLeod made it a big bet that day.
Big klaxon.
The klaxon rang out, and I thought the klaxon. I was ready to just bury my head in the klaxon when it was last on the home turn, and then just grew wings and flew down the outside that day.
Well, what did you learn about it winning the Cox Plate? What did you learn about it?
That I probably shouldn't have backed about 9 runners and worked out about -5% on turnover. I just backed too many horses.
I'll watch your stuff.
I can run a complete race. It's simple as that. So the question mark going into the Cox Plate with Winks was whether it could run. It had a history of producing a very big last 400.
Yep.
In the Cox Plate, it proved that he can run hard above benchmark for a whole race and still finish it off. So, not many horses can do that.
Books, you?
What did
you learn about Winks, about the Cox Plate? Did you learn anything from it? Because to me, I'm with Potts that you should never be definitive about a horse you haven't yet to put a ceiling on. So all we thought was, all we've seen was big closes. But we hadn't yet seen what happens if she put in the race. Well, we fucking saw.
Since I wouldn't say bigger win ever. Mine, I just only had Melbourne Cup, but I had the point that it was one for the Aussies.
Yeah.
It was one for Weary, it was one for Sandy McGregor, not for foreign raiders, not for multi-millionaires using spare change to buy overpriced imports, and other blokes buying in 3 weeks before the race. I've got a Melbourne Cup runner because I've got a spare 40 grand in the bank. Yeah. It was one for the people who were all the way through. John Foote found it. And also for Stevie, my youngest brother Tim's got Down syndrome. He's about the same age as Stevie, so I see a lot of my brother in Steve. And watching Steve go through the whole thing, I just thought it was just sensational, So I know you couldn't beat it. I know it's narrative in it, but it was just sensational.
And Stevie's just he's one of the people that you look forward to seeing when you're on course. Like if you see him, he's leading the horse around. He's always happy. He always says good day.
Right.
I mean, if everyone else was on course had the same attitude as Stevie, the joint would be packed every week.
Sensational. Pots, highs.
Highs. It's a bit of a controversial one. I don't know if too many people will agree with me, but I don't mind that. I've really enjoyed in these recent Cobolt hearings that there's some light being shone on vets and their practices.
Oh yeah.
I think it's been an undertone in the industry for quite a while, and it's not come to the surface until now that I'm aware of, and I think it's a really good thing for the industry to get it out in the open, and for trainers to realise that there's going to be a price to pay for who they give access to their horses. And, you know, like at the recent hearing the vet say that they had no idea what was in the vitamin complex, but they were happy just to stick it in the horse anyway.
Yeah.
To me, it was just mind-blowing. I'm just like, wow, that is extraordinary. The trainers and the vet are prepared to just take that sort of risk. I thought it was amazing.
Well, this was Peter Moody's vet. This is what came out in the hearing yesterday. Andrew Eddy was on about it on the radio this morning. Because yesterday they basically had in the witness box the two feed men from the Moody stable and the vet. Well, the vet didn't actually mix up what went into the syringe. The feed guys do that. I had absolutely no idea that that's how. You'd think that if it was injectable, that unless it was just sort of your standard straight out of the box, like it's just a drench or a vaccine or something like that, yeah, then straight out. But I didn't realise that the feed guys would be mixing up the vitamin complexes that the vet would then inject. Surely the vet, you would, like, from my point of view, I would have expected that the vet would have mixed that up and would have known what was in it.
Do you think further to your point, Potts, that what we're seeing now, and maybe this is what happens when an inquiry goes for as long as it has, that there's starting to be some sympathy towards the trainers, maybe being through their own stupidity or naivety.
Yeah.
Remember when the Essendon thing first hit the sheets, and even if you don't follow AFL, I'm sure you're across enough, but I was doing a gig with a few of the boys, including big Fraser Gehrig. Now, if you follow NRL, Fraser Gehrig was one of the biggest units ever to play AFL footy.
He's a big lad.
Won a couple of Collins for the best full forward. And he was a country boy from Wodonga, got sent up to try his best. And at the time, the initial feeling was, well, if these players have cheated stuff, you know, they should get time. And he said, hang on a minute, he said, you're a kid out of nowhere, you've walked into a club and they say, here, try this, or, you know, so these people do it. You actually do it. Now, there's a reason why players, there's an end game, why that you do get rubbed out. But at the same time, I think there's a bit happening here where people go, geez, this is a big price they have to pay if through their naivety they didn't trust the vet. And as Fraser said, how many people know when they get a flu shot from the doctor? What's in it? I don't know. No one knows. If we're not doctors, we don't know what's going in it. So there's that. I think you're spot on with the vet, and maybe the second thing is, are we trying to just convict people, or are we trying to actually make the sport cleaner? And I think that at the moment the two things aren't mutually exclusive.
I've definitely got sympathy for the trainers because they're in the gun, because they've got the licence.
Yes.
Right, and they're the ones who are going to pay the premium price. The vets are in the background, and you know, in a attempt to compete, they've been allowed more and more access, and I think it's to the detriment of the industry across the board. And I hope that this, as it goes through this process, it sort of gets tidied up a little bit. You know, my other highlight for the year, just on a racing matter, was the preparation of Mongolian Calm by Murray Baker. Is just the best preparation of the stayer I've ever seen. Well done, Murray. Sorry, Bjorn, you're not even the best trainer in your family. So that's the highest.
I'll add another highlight. Bjorn's appearances on Sky Channel on Sunday mornings. What a natural he is.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. I've never met the guy. I don't know people in this show who goes closely. I've never met him. I just reckon he's an absolute TV natural.
Lows?
How many shots we got?
Here we go.
Get
on, buddy.
Whiz through them, right?
Come on.
20th of February. Herald Sun, Rod Nicholson, opening paragraph. The introduction of TVN a dozen years ago provided a windfall for racing.
On your right.
Yeah, I think
21st of Feb, you want me to be quick. Flemington tweets out on Lightning Stakes Day. Up next on Channel 7, their coverage. VRC members learn how to play the sport of kings at the Portsea Polo.
Jesus.
Come on, bro.
This is
lift. Come on.
Number 8. Kate Ashby, the response to Kate Ashby, the rumours, they're totally untrue. And then we didn't see him back to work, and then he resigned. We need to actually just get them all married up. 7, the Stayers series in Victoria. Did you bet on the 3,600 metre racing and the 4,000 metre races at the city tracks that ruined? They ran
They weren't for you, they were for participants.
Yeah, participants. Did that remember you?
No. No, but I did hear. I mean, Dean Lester was particularly keen on him, and he turned the winner of most of them. So, like if you're a good judge, there was something there for you.
I would have been keener if they'd actually had some sort of obstacles in the way, because that's essentially what they were replacing.
Sandown being out of action for the winter.
Yeah.
God knows what that cost the
I'll
industry.
give that a tick.
I'm trying to skip through it. The lack of meaningful questions for riders by our stewards. Now, they promote integrity. They promote Dale Brown wants to get his crosses to the integrity room. Honestly, out of 10, if there was a ride which you weren't happy with that you think involves investigation, out of 10, how confident are you that stewards would ask a question?
Wow. You can't be any higher than 1 or 2, because they just very rarely do they ask.
No, I'm on the opposite.
You think they do question?
Yeah.
Everywhere?
But if I have a query, and I sent through a query about a race 10 days ago, and the response I got back was first class from the chairman of stewards on the day, and it also had a written from Alf Matthews from the hub. The answer was good. It was in depth.
So I take it you're saying it in confidence, but what more can you explain about your query and the response? Because to me that's interesting. Because I see things where I go, how could they not ask a question?
Yeah, well, I know the guys who are in. I mean, I don't know them personally, but I know who they are.
Yeah.
Through being in the racing industry for 20 odd years, the guys are in there, and I reckon they're on the ball.
No, but more your type of question.
Oh, the type of question was a change of tactics, which is, I mean, it's a $300 fine, even if it is. But I was frustrated by it. But I mean, they came back with some pertinent questions and pertinent statements about the race, and by then I had rated and sectional timed the race, and it was a slow paced race and a horse roll forward, which had been back every start in its life. But when the chairman of stewards gave me that much, and then Ralph gave me that much, and I thought, I think they know what they're doing in there. I think you're being a bit harsh on them. I know you've got the examples of D-Lane and in the United States and things like that, but any time I've ever had a query and sent it through, I've had the response been terrific, whether it's Terry Bailey, whether it's one of the other stewards
I think Mark said that in Sydney too, where whenever he's fired off a query to
Ray Murray.
Yeah, that he's always got to. I think that maybe we've got to start asking the questions, Ralph.
I think we do. I fired off a question today to Racing Victoria, and they replied very promptly and professionally. I think, but both of you have got a point. My concern is that I don't have confidence in them to be able to get to the bottom of whether it's rides or a change of a form reversal.
Yeah. Right.
If they've got the tools or the skills to marry it up with betting and get to the bottom of it. Okay, that's the only bugbear I've got. I think the stewards do a good job in terms of tactics, and they can spot a good ride and a bad ride. And the jockey shouldn't get crucified for having a bad ride.
No.
But when it's if it's just an awful bit of riding that just makes no sense whatsoever, and the thing is completely gapped on Betfair, you have to get to the bottom of that.
Yes,
and I think they can go straight over who's laid it on Betfair and have that information in 15 minutes in the room. So see, it might be a professional. Someone's taken robots are taking a set against it, or
one thing you're big on, which is good because you do it publicly, is that often it's just an opinion.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to find a conspiracy theory when sometimes it's just, as you say, it's just a robot taking an opinion.
I got some advice off an old racing guy a couple of years ago, and I was the biggest conspiracy theorist of them all. Just everything was. And he said if you transfer all that energy you put into conspiracy theories and put it into your form analysis and just get your head down and bum up, you'll be far better off. And I have been.
That's good advice. There's no doubt about that. That's very good advice. No, but Ralph's asked the question about the stewards, and I'm just saying I think there is an issue with them being able to get to whether it's possible for anyone. It may not be. I don't know, because the people involved in the betting side of it might be clever enough to stay out of harm's way. But I am saying that sometimes you can predict something's going to happen untoward because it's already showed up in betting.
So
And
the
that's not a
example
good
I gave
for
with Damien Lane with the United States, which I often use, I have no problem about the integrity of the ride. It was a fuck up. Purely and simply, he just waited too long.
Yeah.
My problem was, there was nothing in the steward's report to say, you actually gave this horse no mathematical chance of winning. The four of us could beat Usain Bolt in a 100-metre race if he started walking, and then he didn't start running till the 50-metre mark, or we're at the 90-metre mark, doing our best.
That's it, but then that's all, what comes of that then?
So
You're appeased because they asked a question?
Absolutely.
There's no fine or there's no standing him down for you've done your money on the ride. I mean, it's just one race in 1,000 races we bet on every year, and like I said, what would have happened if that change of tactics, they did say something as good as the bloke got $300 fine? Would I have felt better? Maybe, but so what? I've got to move on to the next race.
My point of view is that the stewards should be there to have the punters back. So that if the more questions I ask, the more jockeys think I'm going to be asked. It's not going to look good for me if I'm asked. And by the way, I should have almost had Damien Lane in the best, because I think he actually has the ability to be the Damien Lane. I think he's that good. It's just a fun. Maybe a couple of better examples.
Well, so if you use that example, I've got no problem with it because it was a bad ride, fine, but that horse was extremely heavily backed. There's no correlation between the ride and the betting, fine.
Yes.
Right? I would have had a problem if very late in betting, the United States was all of a sudden 6-4 out to $5.
Absolutely.
And no price, and then that happened. Then I'm saying that needs to be gotten to the bottom of it, and it happens. It's getting. I think it's getting less. So maybe they are getting to these things because it has diminished. It has, like I'd say 2 years ago, it was happening very regularly.
There was two examples.
It's less now. So
Lucky Largo was well backed at Sandown, and it won. And then at Caulfield, it was about as big a drift as I've seen its next up. $7.50 out to $13, and on the fair I think it was 19s. Got beaten 10 lengths. Now then a month later it backed up.
That's a better example, I think.
Don't Doubt Mama on Turnbull Stakes Day had come off a good win. It was friendless. 35 days later, or 30 days later, wins on Melbourne Cup Day, and it's well backed, and it ran to its best. What I'm saying is, the problem isn't necessarily because the old Dominic Byrne line, it's just collective market intelligence, and we'll look at them right and wrong. But maybe instead of just tying up the stewards report in a bow, a week later, 2 weeks later, because ultimately what we're saying is the more information that's out there, good information, not rubbish, but good information, the better it is for all of us.
I think a good example of it, one that they really should have explained, they should have got on the front foot, got to the bottom of it and explained it, was the way Lankan Rupee ran in his most recent start was identifiable in betting for 15 minutes before that race.
Spot on.
And the way that Alpha Miss was backed also...
What did he do at the start before that?
Look, Dan, that horse was injured.
They want you to take $1.30 a horse that got beaten 10 lengths to start before. The robots.
But the horse...
I was the first up at the start before.
After the race,
first up,
it was
definitely go for the cup.
identified as injured. Right, so I'm saying that it ran that way.
Yeah.
He got 10 lengths on the run that he went out. With. Didn't he have a poor run on the out run? Where did he? Well, anyway, but. That's what I'm saying. You've got to take $1.30 about a horse who went out poorly.
I'm not saying that there's a problem that he got beat, but there were corporates laying over the Betfair lay price for 10 minutes prior to the jump of that race. Now,
how much
there was that horse had obviously, like, I don't know. I mean, it must have been in its work or the track rider, or somehow that information got leaked into the market, but only. A few people knew. It's one that they should have got to the bottom of, and they should have explained.
You got any more lows there, Ralphie?
A couple of quick ones. So the paying to 10th policy brought in by Victorian Racing, which is, and it reduced the win.
Yeah, the win portion of the prize money. Yep.
It's a wagering sport. So the incentive should be to make as much money as possible out of winning.
Yep.
And it's artificially inflating field sizes. And it's actually ruining the ecology of Australian racing. I'm not getting too deep here. The reason being, what I'm saying is, there's no quality control in Victorian racing.
No.
Because all they want to do is put on as many meetings as possible. I now want to have Pakenham on Thursday night and what have you. So that these benchmark 58s, 7-year-olds that are just, they used to go to North Queensland or Perth or South Australia, they just stay here.
Well, there's one thing that's affected me over the last few years, is because all my benchmarking when I was doing picnic form is now out the window.
Is that because they're in maidens?
Well, the thing was, if you could get within 10 lengths at the pros, you could win at the picnics. Well, now it's like if you can get within 3 lengths at the pros,
Yes.
it's all over the shop. And I said that to both Dan and Aussie Glossop on the Friday night at Cranbourne when they ran the Corinthian, which was a 0 to 58, but it had all the picnic jockeys in it. And I said to the boys then, the only difference between this and a normal 58 and this race is that they put picnic jockeys on. Other than that, it was a standard 0 to 58 race.
Yeah.
You're right, there's no quality control whatsoever.
Just some.
Anyway, let's wind up the lows. Let's get there. How we going, Raph? How many more we got?
Well, I think the biggest one's the Cobolt problem. We'll acknowledge it. We'll probably touch on it a bit. We need to get an outcome. And I think it was a Henry Kissinger. It's about the art of diplomacy, about finding the outcome and working your way backwards. Now they're so desperate to get convictions, they've lost sight of the bigger picture. It's dragging the sport through the mud. And
it's similar to that Essendon situation where it's just gone on for so long now. The best was, I can't remember who tweeted it out earlier this week. There was an article from the Sydney Morning Herald with a picture of Terry Bailey and Dale Brown saying, we expect this to be wrapped up in 4 to 6 weeks. That was in early February.
Well, how will it not go for another 3 years?
No.
Well, it'll just because it'll go through VCAT and then it'll go through the Supreme Court and we'll still be talking about it.
There's no end in sight.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's then being fed by the industry media because they just want to keep covering it. It just goes round and round in circles, and it's just a bit boring. Well, it's a lot boring now.
Dan's eyes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like
7
between that and endless trainer interviews, it's just a bit pointless.
Is that it for you for lows, Ralph? I've got one. I just want to say that the low point for me, without a doubt, I would say there were at least 16, maybe 20 world-class jockeys in the Melbourne Cup. A lot of them on extremely good, talented horses, and not one of them that was in a position to do something about it sensed that tempo of the race was about 20 lengths below average and was proactive. To me, that was a complete low light. I think that's an indictment on the riders in that race, and I hope they all had to think about it later, because if I owned one of those horses, and as you mentioned before about the money paid for them, and you only get one crack at it a year, it was collectively the worst set of rides I've ever seen, removing Michelle Payne and probably Frankie Dettori and Tommy Berry. There was probably 4 jockeys that handled that race okay.
And you're speaking like a punter there because Frankie got time for it, didn't he?
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. You actually don't care about that part. No. Tactically, it was...
He gave his horse a chance. I mean, there was nothing he could have done. I mean, he was locked on the fence, but there was a lot of other riders that were in the 3 wide lane travelling, and they'd seen the track pattern on the day. They knew if they got pushed wide, they were in trouble. I mean, it was just...
Outside?
Sorry?
Remind me, Fame Game, it went to the outside, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Sat back last.
That's one of the Mason side horses.
That was not a world-class ride, Zach. Brett Preble on Bondi Beach, that wasn't much good, Brett. There was a lot of them. I could sit here and go through a whole lot of them. Not much good.
I've just got one low light. I think Mick Goody does an amazing job there at Flemington. The way it raced during April, May, June, like when we were getting heavy eights everywhere, but it was good through there and it raced as we expected every time. But I think the pressure got to him a little bit in the run-up to Cup Week.
What type of pressure though?
Well, it was from various, both trainers and the media and from other areas.
The shit fight from Caulfield Guinea's day, saying that saying incorrect stuff, that firm tracks are dangerous for horses, made Mick second guess himself.
Yeah,
and he was kicking himself.
Yeah, and the best thing that Mick did was he came out and he said, I made a mistake, and everyone, we're punters, we make a million mistakes.
Correct.
He came out and said he mistake, but the thing is, you're not going to please everyone all the time. I just reckon we've got 3 or 4 of the best track managers in the world just about here in Melbourne. Let's all just get off their back and let them grow grass and water it and do that stuff, and just get a report from them of what they think the track is, and other than that, leave them alone. There's the track. If you think it's too soft, too fast, too hard, too long, too short, too wet, too dry, leave your horse alone.
I think Mick would have learnt a lot from that. The people that put the most pressure on him, the water, right, being journalists, like Matt Stewart types,
Yes.
are the first to criticise him when it goes wrong.
Well,
So I doubt very much whether Mick Goody will ever listen to Matt Stewart again. And hooray to that.
Well, it was a perpetuating story, wasn't it? Because you sort of write the articles to put the pressure on him to do it, and then when it does happen and it falls apart,
Yeah,
then
the
you get
first
another
one.
couple more stories out of it. So, I just think
Say
they've
about
got
the industry, Mick Goody, Jason Kerr,
Marty Simon,
Marty Simon, no, who's in Samuel? Is it?
Tim Bailey.
They're all guns.
Yep.
Sandown was out of action. Caulfield got criticised.
Yep.
Moonee Valley Cox Plate Day raced 2 litres because they raced the night before and Fleming didn't work. What's it say about the industry that 4 blokes who were fantastic at their jobs all got criticised and all were in a compromised position during the year?
And all of it was by circumstance, by putting too much pressure on these tracks by wanting to race all the time. I just hope, and this is my hope for 2016, is that they don't barbecue Pakenham. Because it's a beautiful track. Yeah, just let it settle in. Well, I went out to that first meeting, Ralph, and I've never been so cold in all my life. I've been to Antarctica and it wasn't that cold. We'll be back in a minute with